How many so-called failures were films the public was not ready to understand? During the 1970s, studios spent fortunes, critics sharpened their knives, and audiences often stayed home. Yet some of those rejected movies refused to disappear. Today, several are praised more loudly than the blockbusters that defeated them. Subscribe to our channel, because the strangest film failures often hide the most unforgettable masterpieces. Number 34. The Ruling Class, 1972. Imagine inheriting an English estate while believing you are a divine messenger sent to spread love. That is the strange problem facing Jack Gurney, played with fearless energy by Peter O'Toole. After his father dies in a bizarre accident, Jack becomes the new Earl of Gurney, but his relatives quickly realize that their fortune now belongs to a man who sleeps on a cross, speaks in grand declarations, and refuses to behave like the cold aristocrat they expect. The family responds by plotting to marry him, control him, or have him declared unfit. What begins as an absurd comedy gradually turns into a much darker attack on privilege. Jack's gentle madness is treated as dangerous because it threatens the family's money, while cruelty and selfishness are accepted as perfectly respectable. The most famous sequence arrives when Jack suddenly performs the varsity drag with the household, transforming a tense drawing room confrontation into a wild musical number. It is funny, shocking, and completely unpredictable. Audiences had little idea how to process a film that mixed satire, tragedy, musical comedy, and psychological horror for more than 2.5 hours. Its commercial failure looked almost inevitable, especially after cuts and uncertain promotion weakened its release. Yet the very qualities that frightened ordinary ticket buyers later attracted devoted viewers. O'Toole's performance became legendary, and the film's attack on class hypocrisy only grew sharper with age. Number 33. Electra Glide in Blue, 1973. Under the wide Arizona sky, motorcycle officer John Wintergreen dreams of leaving traffic duty and becoming a detective. He is short, ambitious, carefully dressed, and desperate to believe that discipline can lift him above the corruption around him. Robert Blake plays Wintergreen as both proud and vulnerable, a man who wants the badge to mean something even when nearly everyone else treats authority like a private joke. A suspicious death gives him the opportunity he has been waiting for. What appears to be a simple case gradually exposes lies, prejudice, damaged friendships, and a police culture that rewards obedience more than truth. The film moves between mystery, character study, and bitter social satire, never becoming the straightforward action picture its advertising suggested. Its most remembered scene is the final highway image. Wintergreen rides alone through the desert, framed against an endless road, when a small mistake from earlier suddenly returns with devastating force. The camera pulls farther away, making one human life look painfully small beneath the landscape. That ending helped make the film unforgettable, but it did not help ticket sales. Viewers expecting a heroic police adventure found something slower, stranger, and far more critical. The movie's shifting tone also confused reviewers, while its connection to youth culture and authority pleased neither side of the generation divide. Over time, Conrad Hall's vast cinematography and director James William Guercio's unusual rhythm earned deeper respect. Fans began to see the picture as a dark reply to Easy Rider, another road movie about freedom, except this time, the man on the motorcycle represents the system. Its failure now feels almost fitting. Electra Glide in Blue was too skeptical to be sold as entertainment, and too beautiful to remain forgotten. If two rejected classics have already surprised you, press like and tell us which one deserved a better opening. Share this countdown, subscribe, and stay with us, because the most shocking comeback stories are still ahead. Number 32. The King of Marvin Gardens, 1972. A lonely radio host sits in a dark studio and tells listeners a story about betrayal. Even before the main plot begins, the film warns us that truth and performance will be impossible to separate. David Stabler, played by Jack Nicholson with unusual restraint, travels to a fading Atlantic City after his brother Jason calls with another grand plan. Jason believes he can build a paradise in Hawaii if he can persuade the right people to invest. Nothing about the dream is stable. Jason, played by Bruce Dern, lives with two women, Sally and Jessica, in a hotel surrounded by empty boardwalks and winter beaches. He talks constantly, turning failure into salesmanship and disappointment into another opportunity. David watches with growing concern, understanding that his brother's confidence is partly an act and partly a trap. One of the film's most haunting scenes places the characters on the beach for a mock beauty contest. Jessica wears a makeshift crown, while Jason announces an imaginary celebration to an empty shore. The moment is playful at first, then unbearably sad. They are performing success, in a city built from broken promises. The movie arrived when audiences expected Nicholson to deliver the rebellious fire of his recent hits. Instead, he offered silence, hesitation, and emotional distance. Bob Rafelson's cold visual style and fragmented storytelling made the picture even harder to market. It performed poorly, and was quickly overshadowed by louder new Hollywood landmarks. Later viewers discovered a masterpiece about American dreaming after the lights have gone out. The decaying hotels are not merely locations, they are physical versions of Jason's mind. Every empty room holds a promise he cannot keep. What failed as star entertainment survived as a beautiful study of brothers, fantasy, and the terrible cost of pretending the next deal will save everything. Number 31. Scarecrow, 1973. Two strangers meet beside an empty California road, and their first conversation becomes a contest in personality. Max, played by Gene Hackman, is loud, suspicious, and ready to fight. Lion, played by Al Pacino, is playful, gentle, and convinced that laughter can calm an angry person. They decide to travel east together, hoping to open a car wash in Pittsburgh after Lion visits the family he abandoned. Their journey looks loose and funny, but the film slowly reveals how fragile both men are. Max believes toughness will prevent humiliation, while Lion hides guilt beneath jokes and odd gestures. In one celebrated scene, Lion enters a roadside bar, wearing layers of clothing, and begins an improvised striptease. The performance is ridiculous, yet Pacino makes it tender. For a moment, a room full of strangers stops judging and simply enjoys his courage. The friendship is tested after the pair land in a work camp. Max's temper creates trouble, and Lion's kindness cannot protect him from a violent inmate. Later, a phone call home destroys the hopeful story Lion has been telling himself. The film refuses to turn their bond into an easy cure. Friendship helps, but it cannot erase years of pain. Despite winning the top prize at Cannes, Scarecrow struggled commercially in the United States. Its drifting structure, quiet sadness, and refusal to provide a triumphant ending made it difficult to sell. Audiences were offered 2 major stars, but not the kind of star vehicle they expected. Decades later, the performances feel astonishingly alive. Hackman and Pacino do not seem to be displaying technique. They appear to be discovering each other in real time. The movie became a cherished cult drama because it understands something blockbusters often avoid. People can love one another deeply and still fail to rescue each other. Number 30. The Friends of Eddie Coyle, 1973. Cold parking lots, ordinary cafeterias, and quiet suburban streets replace the glamorous nightclubs usually found in crime movies. Eddie Coyle is not a kingpin. He is an aging gunrunner facing prison, worried about his wife and children, and tired enough to consider informing on people who might end his life. Robert Mitchum gives Eddie a weary dignity, making every pause feel like the weight of another bad decision. The story follows Eddie as he tries to trade information for mercy. He buys weapons from a young dealer, talks carefully with a federal agent, and watches professional bank robbers operate with frightening patience. Nobody raises his voice unless necessary. Business is conducted through small gestures, coded phrases, and the knowledge that loyalty lasts only while it remains useful. A famous sequence shows masked robbers entering a bank and controlling the room with calm precision. There is no heroic music, and almost no excitement in the usual sense. The scene is terrifying because it feels procedural. Elsewhere, Eddie explains how his fingers were broken as punishment, displaying his damaged hand without asking for sympathy. That moment tells us everything about the world he cannot escape. Critics admired the film, but the public stayed away, and it failed to recover its costs. The title sounded like an ensemble caper, while the movie itself offered a bleak portrait of low-level survival. Mitchum's quiet performance also arrived during an era that increasingly favored younger, more explosive stars. Its reputation grew because later crime films borrowed its realism, especially stories set in Boston. Yet few matched its sadness. The final baseball game sequence is almost casual, which makes the betrayal surrounding it even colder. The film became a cult masterpiece, not by romanticizing criminals, but by showing crime as exhausted labor performed by men who know they are replaceable. Number 29. St. Jack, 1979. Rainy streets and tired hotel rooms define Jack Flowers, an American living in Singapore who survives by arranging discreet companionship for visiting businessmen. Ben Gazzara plays him with warmth, charm, and a sadness that rarely reaches the surface. Jack wants to open his own establishment, not because he dreams of wealth, but because ownership might finally give shape to a life spent helping other people escape theirs. The plot follows his friendship with William Lee, a gentle British accountant who returns to Singapore year after year. Jack also deals with local rivals, suspicious authorities, and an American intelligence operative who wants him to gather compromising information. Every transaction asks the same question: how much of himself will Jack sell before he becomes another service offered to strangers? One of the film's most memorable passages occurs after William dies. Jack arranges a funeral and quietly walks through the city, his usual jokes replaced by grief. Peter Bogdanovich avoids a grand emotional speech. The loss appears in Gazara's face and in the sudden emptiness around him. Another key sequence places Jack in a luxurious private club he has created, only for the dream to be destroyed almost as soon as it becomes real. The film received a limited, uncertain release and earned little attention. Its subject matter made major promotion difficult, while its patient tone offered none of the sensationalism audiences might have expected. It was neither a conventional crime story nor a broad portrait of exotic nightlife. Later admirers recognized a deeply humane character study. Jack is compromised, but he is not without principles. His final refusal to ruin an innocent man gives the story its quiet moral center. What looked commercially shapeless in 1979 now feels precise. A melancholy film about friendship, colonial leftovers, and a man who discovers that dignity may be the only possession nobody can confiscate. Number 28, Straight Time. 1978 Freedom lasts only a few minutes before Max Dembo realizes that the outside world has built another prison around him. Recently released after 6 years behind bars, Max tries to follow the rules. He meets a sympathetic employment counselor named Jenny, accepts a miserable factory job, and reports to a parole officer who treats humiliation as a professional duty. Dustin Hoffman plays Max, without asking the audience to excuse him. The pressure grows when the parole officer searches his room, handcuffs him, and sends him back to detention on suspicion rather than proof. Once released again, Max stops pretending the system will reward patience. He attacks the officer, returns to robbery, and reconnects with men whose lives are already collapsing. The jewelry store robbery is the film's best-known sequence. Max and his partner move through the shop with desperate speed, while alarms, frightened employees, and imperfect timing turn the plan into chaos. The scene avoids glamorous criminal cool. Every second feels like a mistake becoming permanent. Later, Max abandons Jenny on a highway because he understands that remaining with him will destroy her. Despite a major star and strong supporting actors, the movie disappointed Warner Brothers audiences looking for a Hoffman transformation, found a cold, unsentimental crime drama. The marketing could not easily explain whether Max was a victim, a villain, or both. That moral discomfort limited the film's appeal. Its cult reputation grew among viewers who valued realism over reassurance. Max's tragedy is not that he secretly has a heart of gold. It is that he recognizes the damage in himself and continues anyway. The final drive, with police closing in and no fantasy of escape remaining, captures the film's bleak honesty. Straight Time failed to become a hit because it denied audiences the pleasure of redemption, but that refusal is exactly why it endures. Number 27, Blue Collar. 1978. Inside a Detroit automobile factory, noise never stops. Machines pound, supervisors shout, and workers repeat the same motions until anger begins to feel like another piece of equipment. Zeke, Jerry, and Smokey are friends who complain about taxes, bills, unsafe conditions, and a union that claims to represent them while protecting its own power. Richard Pryor, Harvey Keitel, and Yaphet Kotto make the friendship feel funny, tense, and dangerously real. After a night of frustration, the three men decide to rob their union office. They expect cash, but find only a small amount of money and a notebook containing evidence of illegal loans. Suddenly, a foolish burglary becomes leverage against people with far more experience in intimidation. The factory confrontation near the end is the scene that defines the film. Former friends stand on opposite sides of a barrier, shouting accusations while machinery moves between them. Director Paul Schrader freezes the image as their argument reaches its ugliest point, showing how race, fear, and money have successfully divided men who once trusted one another. The movie struggled at the box office, despite powerful reviews. Its working-class setting lacked glamour, and its mixture of comedy, crime, labor politics, and tragedy confused the campaign. Behind the scenes, the actors' conflicts reportedly made production difficult, but the tension also entered the performances. Nothing feels clean or comfortably staged. Later audiences discovered one of the sharpest American films about economic pressure. The union is not presented as a simple enemy, and the workers are not idealized. Everyone is trapped inside a structure that turns weakness into profit. The famous opening montage of bodies working beside machines becomes more disturbing after the story ends. Blue Collar failed commercially because it offered no easy side to cheer, yet its anger remains clear, human, and painfully modern. Number 26. The Driver. 1978 names are unnecessary in Walter Hill's stripped-down crime world. Ryan O'Neal is simply the driver, a professional getaway expert who speaks little and treats every street like a mathematical problem. Bruce Dern is the detective, an obsessive policeman willing to bend the law if it gives him one chance to catch the man who keeps escaping. The detective pressures captured criminals into using the driver for a staged robbery. Meanwhile, the driver hires a mysterious woman known as the Player to protect his identity. Their relationships are built on money, silence, and the assumption that betrayal is always approaching. The parking garage demonstration became the film's signature scene. Asked to prove his skill, the driver takes a bright orange car through a concrete structure at terrifying speed. He scrapes walls, spins through narrow spaces, and deliberately destroys the vehicle while remaining emotionally blank. The sequence is both an audition and a statement of character. He controls chaos by refusing to react to it. American critics and audiences were cold toward the movie, and its domestic box office was poor. The minimalist dialogue appeared empty to viewers, expecting the warmth or humor of a conventional chase thriller. O'Neal's controlled performance was also criticized as lifeless, even though that stillness was central to Hill's design. Time changed the conversation. Filmmakers and genre fans recognized how much modern crime cinema owed to its clean geometry, nighttime streets, and professional characters. Its influence can be felt in later films about silent drivers and ritualized criminal work. The final train station exchange, where a suitcase delivers one last surprise, completes the film's cruel logic without breaking its cool surface. The driver was rejected for being too spare, but its refusal to explain itself became the source of its lasting power. Number 25. The Wanderers, 1979. The Bronx of 1963 appears as a collection of territories, songs, jackets, and teenage myths. Richie, Joey, Turkey, and their friends belong to the Wanderers, an Italian-American gang trying to survive rival groups, strict families, changing relationships, and the terrifying realization that childhood is ending. Philip Kaufman treats their world with humor, affection, and sudden bursts of nightmare. Much of the story follows everyday conflicts: a classroom argument over race, a dangerous romantic game, pressure to marry, and disputes with the enormous Fordham Baldies. Looming beyond those colorful rivals are the Ducky Boys, a silent gang that seems less human than legendary. Their appearance turns street adventure into horror. The unforgettable football game sequence brings nearly every group together. What begins as an organized match becomes a massive fight when the Ducky Boys invade the field. Bodies crash through mud, while parents, players, and gangs struggle side by side. The scene is exciting, frightening, and strangely unifying, as if the entire neighborhood must defend itself against a force from another world. Domestic audiences did not make the film a hit. Released in the same year as The Warriors, it was easy to market The Wanderers as another gang picture, but that label ignored its comedy, romance, nostalgia, and melancholy. Viewers expecting non-stop action encountered a loose collection of memories instead. Its cult following grew through television, home video, and later re-releases. Fans responded to the soundtrack and the characters, but the final moments gave the film deeper meaning. Richie sees Bob Dylan performing through a club window and realizes a new culture is arriving without him. The street kingdom that once seemed permanent is already history. The Wanderers survived because it understands that youth does not end with a speech. It ends when the music changes, and you suddenly recognize the distance. Number 24. Wise Blood, 1979. A young veteran steps off a train wearing a black suit and a hat that makes strangers assume he is a preacher. Hazel Motes insists that he believes in nothing, yet nearly every action he takes resembles a religious mission. Brad Dourif plays Hazel as furious, wounded, and unable to escape the spiritual language he claims to hate. In a decaying southern city, Hazel creates the Church Without Christ, preaching that people need no salvation because there is no soul to save. His message attracts con artists, lonely followers, and Enoch Emery, a strange young man convinced that his wise blood gives him special knowledge. The story becomes a dark comedy about belief surviving even inside rebellion. One of the most famous scenes involves Enoch stealing a preserved body from a museum and presenting it as a new messiah. He later hides inside a gorilla costume and approaches strangers, hoping the disguise will finally earn him affection. The absurdity is funny, but the loneliness beneath it is crushing. Hazel's own journey becomes harsher when he blinds himself, turning rejection of faith into a severe private ritual. John Huston's adaptation of Flannery O'Connor's novel was difficult to sell and earned little theatrical attention. Its religious satire, grotesque humor, and refusal to explain whether Hazel is saint, fraud, or broken skeptic left audiences uncertain. The film also arrived without the kind of campaign needed for such an unusual independent production. Years later, its strange tone became its greatest strength. Dourif's performance gained devoted admirers, while Huston's straightforward direction allowed the madness to feel almost ordinary. The picture never laughs safely from a distance. It recognizes that its characters are ridiculous and spiritually desperate at the same time. Wise Blood failed as a commercial product because it could not be reduced to one message. As a cult masterpiece, it remains gloriously impossible to tame. Number 23. Over the Edge. 1979 rows of new houses, empty lots and recreation centers promise a perfect suburban future. But the teenagers of New Granada see only boredom. Their planned community has been designed for adults who want rising property values, not children who need purpose. With nowhere meaningful to go, the kids gather in unfinished buildings, use drugs, carry weapons, and treat the local youth center as their last territory. Carl, played by Michael Eric Kramer, is caught between responsible parents and rebellious friends. Richie, played by a young Matt Dillon, has already decided that every adult is the enemy. When the town closes the recreation center and a police encounter turns fatal, frustration becomes open revolt. The film's legendary climax takes place during a parents' meeting at the school. Teenagers lock the adults inside, chain the doors, and destroy cars in the parking lot. Flames rise while the children celebrate, but the scene never feels like a simple victory. Their anger is understandable, yet the destruction shows how completely the community has failed them. The final bus ride past burning vehicles is both thrilling and deeply sad. The distributor gave the movie only a tiny release, reportedly fearing that its subject could encourage trouble. With almost no theatrical chance, it disappeared before a wide audience could discover it. That commercial burial was more severe than an ordinary flop. The film was treated like a danger that should not be advertised. Cable television and home video eventually created its cult following. Musicians, filmmakers, and former suburban teenagers recognized the truth beneath its drama. The adults are not cartoon villains. They are simply too distracted by development plans to notice their children becoming strangers. Over the Edge became a masterpiece of youth rebellion because it understood that the riot begins long before the first window breaks. It begins when nobody listens. Number 22. Rolling Thunder. 1977 Major Charles Rain returns to Texas after years as a prisoner of war, but the welcome home ceremony cannot return him to ordinary life. William Devane plays Rain with controlled stillness. His wife has moved on, his son barely knows him, and public applause feels distant from the private damage he carries. The town gives Rain a case filled with silver dollars, one for every day of his captivity. A group of criminals learns about the gift, invades his home, and demands the money. The confrontation leads to one of the film's most infamous scenes. Rain's hand is forced into a garbage disposal while he refuses to reveal where the coins are hidden. The violence is harsh, but Devane's expression is what makes it unforgettable. He endures the attack with the same emotional silence that defined his imprisonment. After losing his family, Rain rebuilds his damaged hand with a metal hook and asks fellow veteran Johnny Voden, played by Tommy Lee Jones, to join him. Voden's quiet answer, "He will get his gear," reveals that he has been waiting for a mission. Their final assault on a border town establishment is staged with grim precision rather than heroic celebration. The film faced distribution confusion and divided reactions. Its mixture of trauma drama and revenge thriller made studios nervous, and the release never produced the success its supporters expected. Some viewers saw only a brutal exploitation picture, while others found a serious study of men trained to survive conditions they cannot leave behind. Cult audiences later embraced both sides of the film. Quentin Tarantino named a company after it, and Devane's performance became a standard for restrained vengeance. Rolling Thunder lasts because Rain does not suddenly become violent. He has already been living in a war that everyone else believes ended when the parade began. Number 21. The Last Wave. 1977. A clear sky suddenly releases chunks of ice onto a school playground. Frogs fall with the rain. Water appears where it should not exist. From its opening minutes, Peter Weir's mystery suggests that nature is sending messages modern people have forgotten how to read. Richard Chamberlain plays David Burton, a Sydney lawyer assigned to defend a group of Aboriginal men accused of killing another man. The official explanation describes a drunken fight, but David senses that the death is connected to ritual, dreams, and an approaching disaster. His ordinary home life begins to dissolve as visions of water invade his sleep, and strange weather surrounds the city. The most memorable sequence leads David beneath Sydney into a hidden ceremonial space. There he discovers paintings and objects that seem to predict a massive wave. He emerges toward the coast and sees what may be a vision of the ocean rising into an enormous wall. Peter Weir refuses to explain whether the event is physical, prophetic, or psychological. That uncertainty gives the ending its power. The film earned respect in Australia, but struggled to connect widely overseas, particularly in the United States. Its slow pace, spiritual mystery, and refusal to solve every question made it difficult to market as either disaster film or courtroom thriller. Audiences promised spectacle found contemplation instead. Its cult reputation grew as viewers revisited Weir's early work and recognized how carefully the movie uses sound, weather, and architecture. The picture is also unsettling because David's intelligence cannot protect him. His profession depends on evidence and orderly explanation, but the world he enters follows older rules. The Last Wave survived its disappointing release because it offers something rarer than a neat answer: the feeling that a modern city may be built over truths it cannot understand, and that the forgotten world is still watching. Number 20. The Duelists, 1977. A minor disagreement becomes a lifelong prison for two French officers during the Napoleonic era. Lieutenant Dubert is ordered to arrest Lieutenant Ferraud after Ferraud wounds a civilian in a duel. Ferraud treats the arrest as an insult and challenges the messenger. That first clash should settle the matter, but pride keeps reviving it across years. Wars, promotions, and collapsing empires. Keith Carradine plays Dubert as a reasonable man trapped by the social code of his class. Harvey Keitel makes Ferraud fierce, suspicious, and almost religious in his devotion to combat. Neither fully remembers why the feud began, yet both continue because stopping would require admitting that much of their lives has been wasted. Ridley Scott's famous visual style appears fully formed in his first feature. Candle-lit rooms resemble old paintings, while misty fields and frozen landscapes make the officers look small inside history. The most celebrated duel takes place on horseback. The men charge through open ground with curved swords, their movements both elegant and desperate. Later confrontations grow quieter, showing that obsession can survive even after physical strength fades. The film won admiration at Cannes, but disappointed commercially. Period dramas were expensive to promote, and the absence of a conventional hero or sweeping romance limited broad appeal. Audiences may also have expected more action than the story's measured rhythm provided. Over time, its beauty and precision earned passionate defenders. The final duel among ruined buildings becomes a moral victory not through death, but through Dubert's decision to declare Ferraud legally dead and walk away. That choice breaks the cycle more completely than another wound could. The Duelists became a cult masterpiece because it reveals the absurdity beneath honor. Two men surrendering decades to a quarrel that survives only because neither can bear the shame of freedom. Number 19. New York, New York, 1977. Victory celebrations fill the streets, but inside a crowded nightclub, saxophonist Jimmy Doyle is already creating trouble. He repeatedly approaches singer Francine Evans, ignoring her refusals until charm, irritation, and accident pull them together. Robert De Niro makes Jimmy restless and unpredictable, while Liza Minnelli gives Francine the disciplined focus of someone who knows talent alone will not build a career. Their romance develops through music, arguments, separations, and professional jealousy. Jimmy wants jazz to remain spontaneous and personal. Francine learns to shape her voice for larger audiences. Love turns into competition because each person hears success differently. The film's visual centerpiece is the extended performance of the title song. Francine stands alone before an audience and sings New York, New York with controlled confidence. The artificial sets, glowing lights, and Minnelli's enormous voice create a deliberate old Hollywood dream. Yet the story surrounding that performance is emotionally raw. Success has arrived, but it cannot repair the relationship that helped produce it. Martin Scorsese built lavish studio environments and encouraged improvisation, creating a combination audiences found difficult to accept. The film cost heavily, ran long, and arrived as musical tastes were changing. Its initial version performed poorly, and the loss damaged Scorsese during an already unstable period. Viewers expecting cheerful nostalgia instead encountered emotional cruelty and a leading man who could be exhausting. Later cuts, restorations, and repeated screenings allowed the ambition to become clearer. The picture is not trying to revive a classic musical innocently. It uses painted backdrops and glamorous lighting to expose the difference between public fantasy and private behavior. Jimmy and Francine can create beautiful music while hurting each other deeply. New York. New York became a cult object because its failure was visible inside its design. A grand entertainment about two people who cannot turn performance into happiness. Number 18. Opening night, 1977. A fan waits outside a theater in the rain, hoping to meet famous actress Myrtle Gordon. Moments later, the young woman is struck by a car while Myrtle watches. That sudden death follows the actress into rehearsals for a new play about aging, forcing her to confront a role she dislikes and a future she fears. Gina Rowlands plays Myrtle with terrifying openness. She drinks, misses cues, argues with the playwright, and begins seeing the dead fan as a physical presence. Director John Cassavetes keeps the camera close, making rehearsal rooms and hotel hallways feel more dangerous than any traditional thriller. The question is not whether Myrtle is losing control, but whether losing control might be the only way she can find honesty. The most famous section is the final stage performance. Myrtle arrives late and barely able to stand. Her co-star Maurice, played by Cassavetes, tries to guide the play back toward its written form, but she begins improvising. Their scene becomes a battle of timing, anger, and trust. The audience laughs, unaware that the actors are rescuing a production from disaster in real time. The movie received poor distribution and almost no meaningful commercial run in the United States. Its length, emotional intensity, and uncertain boundary between theater and life made it difficult to advertise. Without a clear genre or reassuring explanation, it vanished quickly. The cult grew through filmmakers, actors, and viewers who recognized Rowlands' achievement. Myrtle is not presented as a simple victim of age, alcohol, or fame. She is an artist, fighting material that asks her to surrender. The ending offers neither complete recovery nor defeat. It shows creation happening inside crisis. Opening night became a masterpiece because it treats performance not as pretending, but as a dangerous attempt to remain alive while everyone watches. Number 17. The Killing of a Chinese Bookie. 1976, Cosmo Vitelli owns a small Los Angeles nightclub where performers deliver awkward songs, strange jokes, and theatrical routines to customers who barely pay attention. He treats the club as a work of art, even when its debts threaten to swallow him. Ben Gazzara plays Cosmo as stylish, nervous, and determined to act like a successful gentleman, while money keeps exposing the performance. After finally clearing one gambling debt, Cosmo immediately loses again. Gangsters offer a solution: assassinate a Chinese bookmaker, and the debt will disappear. Cosmo accepts because refusal may cost him everything. Yet the job is far more dangerous than he has been told. The assassination sequence is famous for its uncomfortable realism. Cosmo drives through the night, stops for food, argues with a taxi driver, and enters the target's home without the smooth confidence expected from a movie killer. The violence is sudden and messy. Afterward, he returns wounded to his club, where the show must continue. Mr. Sophistication sings on stage, while Cosmo bleeds behind the scenes, a perfect image of the film's central idea. John Cassavetes released an original version that failed commercially, then recut the picture 2 years later. Neither release found a large audience. The title suggested an action thriller, but viewers encountered a melancholy character study filled with pauses, nightclub performances, and emotional uncertainty. Its reputation slowly transformed. Critics and filmmakers began to see Cosmo as a portrait of the independent artist, indebted to dangerous people, ignored by the public, and still desperate to protect a personal vision. The shabby club becomes beautiful because he believes in it. The Killing of a Chinese Bookie endured as a cult masterpiece because it understands that art and self-deception can look identical until the moment someone is willing to bleed for the difference. Number 16. Mikey and Nicky, 1976. A terrified man hides in a cheap hotel room, convinced that someone has been sent to kill him. Nicky calls his childhood friend Mikey for help, and Mikey arrives with medicine, patience, and a secret. The audience soon learns that he has already agreed to lead the assassin toward the man begging for protection. Peter Falk and John Cassavetes play the friends with such intimacy that the story feels overheard rather than performed. They wander through Philadelphia, argue about old betrayals, visit Nicky's mother's grave, meet women from his damaged personal life, and repeatedly shift between affection and cruelty. Nicky suspects the truth but cannot stop testing the only person who still comes when he calls. A devastating scene unfolds at the cemetery. Nicky speaks to his dead mother while Mikey waits, burdened by the knowledge that every delay makes the planned killing harder. Another unforgettable moment arrives outside Mikey's house near dawn. Nicky pounds on the locked door and calls to the family inside, while Mikey refuses to open it. Friendship, fear, and self-preservation collapse into one sound. The production became legendary for conflict. Elaine May shot enormous amounts of footage, went far beyond schedule, and fought the studio over control. The eventual release was limited and poorly supported, turning the film into a commercial failure before audiences had a fair chance to discover it. Years later, May's preferred version received recognition as one of the great American films about male friendship. Its comedy makes the ending more painful, Because Mikey and Nikki truly do love each other. That love simply cannot survive the damage they have accumulated. The film became a cult masterpiece because betrayal is not treated as the opposite of friendship. It is shown as something that can grow inside friendship until the locked door becomes inevitable. Number 15. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. Across the ruins of a future America, survival depends on finding food, avoiding raiders, and listening to a telepathic dog with better judgment than most humans. Vic is a young scavenger, driven by appetite and impulse. Blood, his intelligent canine companion, helps him locate supplies and warns him about danger. But their friendship is built on constant insults and real dependence. Dawn Johnson plays Vic as immature rather than heroic. When he meets Quilla June, she appears to offer affection and escape. Instead, she deliberately leads him underground to Topeka, a bizarre community that has rebuilt small-town America as a smiling dictatorship. Everyone wears painted faces, marching bands play cheerful music, and a committee controls reproduction because the population can no longer continue naturally. The underground arrival is the movie's most famous visual stretch. Vic moves from a blasted wasteland into spotless streets, where artificial friendliness feels more frightening than open violence. Later, a machine is prepared to use him as breeding material, turning his fantasy of comfort into another form of imprisonment. The film's dark humor, rough production, and provocative ending made broad success unlikely. It played unevenly, earned modest returns at best, and initially reached only a limited audience. Many reviewers rejected its tone, while ordinary viewers had little warning that the story would mix post-apocalyptic adventure with savage social satire. Cult audiences embraced its refusal to behave. Blood became one of science fiction's most memorable animal characters, and the underground society influenced later visions of cheerful dystopia. The final scene, in which Vic chooses his dog over Quilla June, remains controversial because the punchline is deliberately cold. A Boy and His Dog endured not because every idea aged comfortably, but because its strange world, bitter comedy, and damaged friendship still provoke debate long after safer futuristic adventures disappeared. Number 14. Night Moves, 1975. Private Detective Harry Mosby discovers that understanding other people may be easier than understanding his own marriage. Gene Hackman plays Harry as observant, stubborn, and emotionally slow. While his wife begins an affair, he accepts a case involving a runaway teenage girl named Deli, daughter of a former actress living on old money and resentment. The search leads Harry from Hollywood to the Florida Keys, where Deli stays with her stepfather Tom, and a circle of adults whose relationships are filled with secrets. Harry finds the girl quickly, but solving the official case only opens a deeper mystery involving smuggling, betrayal, and a drowned pilot. One quietly famous scene shows Harry discussing an Eric Rohmer film, saying it resembles watching paint dry. The joke reveals his impatience with stories that require emotional attention, exactly the skill his own life demands. The climactic boat sequence is more openly memorable. Harry follows a seaplane over dark water, discovers a body beneath the surface, and watches hidden connections become clear, only when it is too late to use them. The movie earned a modest theatrical return and was widely overlooked. Its marketing suggested a traditional detective thriller, but Arthur Penn delivered a mournful post-Watergate puzzle in which information provides no comfort. The plot's deliberate gaps frustrated viewers expecting a clean solution. Later critics placed it among the finest neo-noirs of the decade. Hackman's performance gained depth with repeated viewing, especially his final realization that he has been moving inside a circle designed by other people. The closing image of Harry's damaged boat turning helplessly on the sea transforms the entire film into a visual statement. Night Moves became a cult masterpiece because its detective does uncover the truth. The tragedy is that truth arrives after every useful choice has already vanished. Number 13. Slade in Flame, 1975. Behind the bright costumes and screaming fans, the music business becomes a machine that converts friendship into merchandise. Members of the British band Slade play Flame, a fictional group assembled from musicians who begin in rival acts. Their rise is fast, but every new opportunity comes with contracts, managers, threats, and compromises. The story follows the band from rough local shows to national success. Robert Seymour, a polished executive, replaces their first manager and transforms Flame into a profitable brand. The musicians gain better hotels and larger crowds, yet they lose control over the decisions that supposedly serve them. Unlike most pop star vehicles, the film refuses to present fame as a reward for good songs and hard work. Its most memorable scene comes during the band's breakup. Arguments that once seemed manageable finally become impossible. and the men face reporters while their professional smiles collapse. Another powerful sequence shows their former manager attempting to enforce his claim through intimidation. The danger feels grounded rather than sensational because it grows naturally from agreements made when nobody understood their future value. The movie was a box office disappointment, especially compared with Slade's enormous popularity. Fans expecting a cheerful concert picture found a bleak drama about exploitation. Adults who might have respected its seriousness could easily dismiss it as another vehicle for a glam rock group. The campaign could not solve that contradiction. Decades later, musicians and critics praised its honesty. The performances feel lived in because the cast understood touring, press attention, and band tension from experience. The songs remain strong, but the film never lets music erase the business surrounding it. Slade in Flame became a cult masterpiece because it asks a question most promotional rock movies avoid. When a band finally belongs to everyone, does it still belong to the people who created it? Number 12. Listomania. 1975 classical composer Franz Liszt enters Ken Russell's imagination as the first modern rock star. Roger Daltrey plays him as a performer, surrounded by screaming admirers, jealous rivals, political pressure, and enormous symbols that turn biography into visual madness. Historical accuracy is not the main concern. The film wants to capture celebrity as fever. The loose story follows Liszt's relationships with women, his conflict with fellow composer Richard Wagner, and his gradual movement toward religious life. Russell combines silent comedy, glam rock, fantasy, operetta, and satire. Wagner becomes a vampire-like nationalist building a monstrous dream, while Liszt is pushed into a final mission that resembles a superhero adventure. The film's famous scenes are difficult to describe without sounding invented. In one, Liszt performs at a piano while admirers fight over him, and the music becomes a public seduction. In another, Wagner's ideas are represented through a giant mechanical figure and an army of uniformed children. The climax sends Liszt through the sky in a strange vehicle powered by love and music. Audiences largely rejected the film, and it became a costly commercial failure. Even viewers familiar with Russell's excess were divided by its deliberate vulgarity and wild changes in tone. Marketing a classical composer biography as a rock fantasy may have attracted curiosity, but it also guaranteed disappointment from anyone expecting a normal period drama. Its cult reputation grew because normality was never the goal. Later fans recognized an early music video energy and a sharp understanding of celebrity worship. Beneath the outrageous imagery is an argument that art can be captured by politics, commerce, and ego. Listomania failed when judged as respectable biography. As a cinematic explosion about fame, nationalism, and performance, it remains almost impossible to imitate. Number 11. Zabriskie Point. 1970 student meetings, corporate offices, desert roads, and advertising billboards create an America divided between rebellion and consumption. Mark is a restless young man, drawn toward campus protest, but skeptical of organized politics. Daria works for a property developer planning a luxury community in the desert. Their paths cross after Mark steals a small airplane and flies over her car. Michelangelo Antonioni treats the plot less as a conventional story than a journey through images. Mark and Daria meet at Zabriskie Point, where the empty landscape briefly frees them from institutions and expectations. Their encounter expands into the film's famous desert vision. Dozens of couples appear across the sand in a dreamlike celebration of connection. The scene is not presented as ordinary reality, but as a fantasy of a generation escaping rules. The final sequence is even more celebrated. Daria imagines her employer's modern desert house exploding again and again from different angles. Furniture, televisions, clothes, books, and food float through the air in slow motion, while Pink Floyd's music grows louder. Consumer objects become beautiful only after they are destroyed. MGM spent heavily and received disastrous returns. Critics attacked Antonioni's view of American youth, while the inexperienced leads were criticized for flat performances. The movie's loose narrative and political symbolism alienated both mainstream audiences and many of the young people it hoped to represent. Time did not erase those flaws, but it changed their meaning. The cinematography, soundtrack, architecture, and final explosion gained enormous influence. Viewers began to value the film as a dream of America seen by an outsider, simplified in places, yet visually revealing. Zabriskie Point became a cult masterpiece because its failure is part of its fascination. It tried to capture a national crisis through landscapes and objects, and the images outlived the arguments that buried it. Number 10. The Last Movie. 1971. A Hollywood crew travels to a remote Peruvian village to shoot a western, leaving behind damaged land, confused residents, and stuntman Kansas, who decides not to return home. Dennis Hopper turns the production into a story about images infecting reality. The villagers have watched filmmakers create gunfights and deaths, but they do not understand that cameras make the violence pretend. After the crew departs, local people construct cameras and equipment from sticks. They begin restaging the Western as ritual, treating invented action as if it carries real power. Kansas tries to explain that nobody should actually be hurt, yet he is partly responsible for bringing this dangerous new language into their world. The film's most famous material shows the mock production using wooden cameras. The image is playful at first, then increasingly disturbing as performance, religion, and violence become impossible to separate. Hopper also interrupts scenes with editing marks and abrupt jumps, reminding viewers that the movie itself is manipulating them. Universal expected another counterculture success after Easy Rider, but Hopper delivered an experimental puzzle. Production became chaotic, the editing process stretched on, and the studio struggled to understand the result. Although the film won a major prize at Venice, it failed badly with critics and audiences during its limited release. The disappointment damaged Hopper's directing career for years. Later generations approached it without the burden of expecting another Easy Rider. Restorations revealed the beauty of the Peruvian locations and the seriousness beneath the disorder. The movie became a cult object because it anticipated debates about filmmaking, cultural intrusion, and the power of recorded images. Kansas believes he can step outside Hollywood while continuing to live inside its fantasies. The last movie failed partly because it seemed broken, but its fractures were the subject. It is a film about cinema losing control of the world it pretends merely to observe. Number 9. Wake in Fright. 1971 schoolteacher John Grant dreams of escaping a tiny Australian settlement and returning to Sydney. To begin his holiday, he travels to the mining town of Bundan Yaba, known by locals as the Yaba. One night there should be enough before his flight. Instead, heat, alcohol, gambling, and wounded pride pull him into a nightmare that seems to have no exit. John risks his savings on the coin game 2-Up, believing one lucky win can pay off the government bond keeping him in remote service. The famous gambling sequence turns a simple toss into pure psychological suspense. Sweat covers his face as money changes hands and the crowd shouts around him. When his luck collapses, so does the future he imagined. Stranded, John accepts hospitality from aggressive strangers and meets Doc Tyden, a cynical doctor played by Donald Pleasance. Their drinking sessions become increasingly intense, leading to the film's most notorious passage, a nighttime kangaroo hunt filmed with disturbing realism. The scene is difficult, but it reveals the group's need to prove belonging through shared excess. Australian audiences initially resisted the film's portrait of their culture, and box office results were limited despite strong festival attention. International marketing also struggled to define it. Was it horror, social drama, or an outback adventure? For years, the movie nearly disappeared when usable materials became difficult to locate. Its restoration produced one of cinema's great rediscoveries. Viewers recognized a psychological masterpiece about masculinity, addiction, and the terror of compulsory friendliness. Nobody locks John in the Yaba. People keep offering drinks, meals, games, and company. His weakness is that refusing them feels like admitting he does not belong. Wake in Fright became a cult classic because it turns hospitality into a trap and makes a brightly lit town feel more frightening than darkness. Number 8. Oh Lucky Man. 1973. Mick Travis begins as an eager coffee salesman who believes charm and hard work will lead upward. Malcolm McDowell carries him through factories, laboratories, private mansions, prisons, and corporate offices, each promising opportunity while hiding another form of exploitation. Director Lindsay Anderson turns his journey into a modern fable, where optimism repeatedly collides with power. The story moves in episodes rather than a straight line. Mick discovers a military installation, becomes involved in medical experiments, meets wealthy industrialist Sir James Burgess, and is eventually used as a convenient fall guy. Whenever he believes he has understood the rules change. One of the film's strangest scenes takes place in a laboratory, where Mick sees a human head attached to the body of a pig. The image is brief, absurd, and horrifying, capturing a society that calls cruelty progress. Alan Price and his band appear throughout, performing songs that comment on the action. Their music interrupts the story like a clear voice inside Mick's confusion. At nearly 3 hours, the film was a commercial challenge from the beginning. Its satire attacked capitalism, science, government, charity, and even revolutionary idealism, leaving no obvious audience flattered. The episodic structure and surreal humor made ordinary promotion nearly impossible, and ticket sales were disappointing. Cult viewers later embraced its scale and nerve. Mick's journey can be funny, exhausting, and mysterious, because that is how institutions appear to someone trying to rise through them. The final audition scene brings the satire back onto filmmaking itself. Anderson strikes Mick after asking him to smile, and the young man suddenly understands that performance may be the only available survival skill. Oh Lucky Man became a masterpiece because it does not offer a pure alternative to corruption. It simply keeps asking who benefits whenever society tells an ambitious person to remain cheerful. Number 7. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, 1974. A wealthy Mexican landowner offers a fortune for proof that Alfredo Garcia, the man who impregnated his daughter, is dead. Two professional killers carry the demand into bars and back rooms until it reaches Benny, a piano player who learns from his girlfriend Alita that Alfredo has already died in a road accident. Benny sees an easy chance to collect money from a corpse. Warren Oates gives Benny a sweaty, wounded humanity. He travels with Alita to Alfredo's grave, talking about a future that the reward might buy. Their journey briefly becomes tender, which makes the violence awaiting them feel crueler. After grave robbers attack, Benny awakens beside Alita and the severed head he has been hired to deliver. The image of Benny driving with the head in a sack became the film's defining symbol. He talks to Alfredo as if the dead man were a partner, blaming him, questioning him, and slowly losing the difference between mission and madness. In another memorable scene, Benny responds to armed bikers with an explosion of desperate force, turning a threatening encounter into tragedy. Critics attacked the movie, and audiences stayed away. Sam Peckinpah's reputation for difficult productions shaped the reception, while the film's dusty sadness and ugly violence made it hard to market as either action or romance. It was treated as evidence that the director had lost control. Later defenders argued that this was the rare Peckinpah film he made almost entirely on his own terms. Its emotional center is not the reward or revenge, but Benny's realization that money has destroyed the only relationship that mattered. The final drive toward the landowner's fortress becomes an act of judgment against everyone, including himself. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia became a cult masterpiece because its hero knows he is ruined and continues until the people who priced a human life must look at the cost. Number 6. Phantom of the Paradise, 1974. Talented composer Winslow Leach believes music producer Swan can help complete his rock cantata. Instead, Swan steals the work, has Winslow framed, and turns his private vision into material for a new entertainment palace called the Paradise. A prison accident and a record-pressing machine destroy Winslow's face and voice, transforming him into a masked figure who haunts the theater. Brian De Palma combines the Phantom of the Opera, Faust, pop satire, horror, comedy, and tragic romance. Winslow agrees to finish the cantata when Swan promises that singer Phoenix will perform it. The contract is signed in blood, but Swan has no intention of honoring the spirit of the deal. The movie contains several famous set pieces. During a cheerful nostalgia number, the Phantom plants an explosive inside a stage prop shaped like a car. De Palma films the sequence with split screens, letting the audience watch performance and sabotage at once. Later, glam singer Beef rehearses in a shower, while Winslow's shadow appears behind him, turning a comic scene into suspense. The film performed poorly across most of the United States, although it became unusually successful in Winnipeg. Audiences and marketers struggled with its constant changes in tone. It was too funny to sell as horror, too dark to sell as musical comedy, and too emotional to dismiss as parody. Midnight screenings and home video built its cult. Paul Williams's songs gained admiration, while Swan's control over artists and images appeared increasingly prophetic. The Paradise is not merely a theater. It is a machine that packages rebellion for sale. Winslow becomes monstrous because he believes ownership of his music will restore justice. Phantom of the Paradise became a masterpiece of cult cinema because it understood that the entertainment industry can steal an artist's face, voice, and story, and still ask him to finish the album. Number 5. THX 1138, 1971. White rooms, shaved heads, numbered names, and constant medication define the future imagined by George Lucas before Star Wars. THX 1138 works in a factory assembling robotic police officers. His emotions are chemically suppressed, his movements are monitored, and even private confession is delivered to a machine that answers with comforting recorded phrases. His roommate, LUH, secretly changes their medication, allowing both of them to feel desire, fear, and love. Their awakening makes ordinary life impossible. The state separates them, places THX on trial, and sends him into a seemingly endless white prison, with other people who have forgotten whether escape is possible. The film's most famous imagery comes from that prison. There are no visible walls, only figures standing in blinding emptiness, while voices drift without direction. THX finally walks away, discovering that the boundary may have existed mainly through obedience. The later car chase offers a different kind of beauty. Robotic officers pursue him through tunnels, but the operation is stopped when the cost of capture exceeds its authorized budget. Warner Bros. Cut the film and released it with little confidence. Its cold style, limited dialogue, and abstract world alienated many viewers, resulting in a commercial loss. Audiences who later associated Lucas with warm adventure were surprised to discover this severe debut. His success with Star Wars encouraged reissues and new attention, though later digital alterations created debate among purists. The original vision remains powerful because control is shown as administrative rather than theatrical. Nobody needs to deliver a grand speech about tyranny. People are managed through pills, spending limits, pre-recorded advice, and fear of stepping outside the approved route. THX 1138 became a cult masterpiece because its future did not depend on fantastic monsters. It imagined oppression as a system so ordinary that freedom begins with the shocking decision to stop taking the medicine. Number 4. The Wicker Man. 1973 Police Sergeant Neil Howie travels to the remote Scottish island of Summerisle after receiving a letter about a missing girl named Rowan Morrison. He expects cooperation, but residents deny knowing her, change their stories, and behave as though the investigation is an amusing interruption. Howie's strict Christian faith is challenged by a community openly devoted to older pagan customs. Edward Woodward makes Howie both admirable and rigid. His refusal to accept the islanders' beliefs keeps him focused, yet it also prevents him from recognizing how carefully they are guiding him. Christopher Lee's Lord Summerisle welcomes the officer politely, explaining the island's rituals with the confidence of a teacher who already knows the examination result. Several scenes became legendary. Britt Ekland's Willow sings through the wall of Howie's room, testing his discipline while he struggles to pray. The May Day procession surrounds him with masks, music, and apparent celebration. Then the search ends on a hill where an enormous wooden figure waits. The final revelation transformed the film into folk horror history. Howie realizes that the missing child was bait and that he has been selected as an offering. Trapped inside the wicker structure, he prays while the islanders sing and the sun sets behind them. The scene is terrifying because both sides believe completely in what they are doing. Its original release was badly mishandled. The film was cut, placed on double bills, and treated without confidence, limiting its commercial reach. Different versions circulated, strengthening the sense that a complete masterpiece had been buried. Cult audiences spent decades restoring its reputation. The songs, landscapes, and clash of faiths made it endlessly discussable. The Wicker Man survived because it offers no safe outsider's position. Howie is brave, the islanders are welcoming, and the entire beautiful ceremony is moving toward an ending nobody can escape. Number 3. Harold and Maude. 1971. 19-year-old Harold lives in luxury, but treats life as an empty performance. He stages elaborate fake deaths to shock his controlling mother, attends funerals for strangers, and drives a hearse because ordinary youth culture seems meaningless to him. At one funeral, he notices Maude, a lively woman approaching 80, who steals cars, ignores rules, and treats every day as borrowed treasure. Bud Cort's stillness and Ruth Gordon's warmth create one of cinema's strangest romances. Maude teaches Harold to play music, notice living things, and resist institutions that confuse obedience with morality. Their age difference is never presented as a cheap joke. The relationship is a collision between someone who has refused to begin living and someone who understands exactly why time matters. The film's famous scenes balance dark comedy with tenderness. Harold's staged accidents grow increasingly elaborate, including a hanging in the family home, while his mother calmly continues a phone call. Later, Maude uproots a struggling tree from a city street so they can replant it in the countryside. The act is illegal, impractical, and completely sincere. Paramount released the movie to poor reviews and empty theaters. Its tone baffled critics, while the romance and humor made conventional marketing nearly impossible. It disappeared quickly before repertory screenings slowly built an audience. The ending explains why the film lasted. Harold plans a future with Maude, but she has already decided that 80 is enough. After her death, he drives his car toward a cliff, apparently repeating his old obsession. Then he appears safely above the wreckage, playing the banjo she gave him. For the first time, the performance of death becomes a choice to live. Harold and Maude became a cult masterpiece because it turned rejection, grief, and mortality into an argument for joy without ever becoming sentimental. Number 2. The Rocky Horror Picture Show. 1975. A flat tire sends newly engaged Brad and Janet toward a castle filled with music, strange guests, and rules that collapse almost immediately. Their host is Dr. Frank N. Furter, played by Tim Curry, with theatrical confidence that makes every entrance feel like a challenge. He unveils Rocky, a muscular creation designed as the perfect companion, while old secrets and jealousies begin tearing the celebration apart. The story parodies old science fiction and horror movies, but plot is only part of its identity. Songs invite the audience to participate, characters speak directly to forbidden curiosity, and the castle becomes a temporary world where ordinary behavior no longer controls anyone. Several scenes became cultural rituals. The time warp turns a dance instruction into a communal explosion. Frank's elevator entrance during Sweet Transvestite established Curry as an icon. The dinner sequence slowly reveals that absent delivery rider Eddie has not truly left the party, while the floor show places nearly everyone in glittering costumes for a final declaration of freedom. When first released, the film underwhelmed at the box office and received weak reviews. Its campaign could not identify a mainstream audience, and the initial run appeared finished. Then, midnight programmers changed everything. Viewers returned in costume, shouted responses, carried props, and performed in front of the screen. Watching became a live event created jointly by film and audience. That participation turned a failure into one of the longest-running theatrical phenomena in cinema history. Its legacy also includes debate, because language and representation from the era do not land identically today. Yet the invitation at its center remains powerful. Outsiders can enter a room, invent themselves, and find others willing to play along. The Rocky Horror Picture Show became the defining cult film because fans did not merely rescue it. They rebuilt the experience every weekend and made rejection part of the celebration. Number 1. Sorcerer. 1977. 4 desperate men hiding in a poor Colombian village are offered a job that sounds like a delayed death sentence. An oil well has exploded, and the only way to stop the fire is to transport unstable crates of dynamite across mountains and jungle. The explosives have deteriorated so badly that vibration, heat, or one careless movement could trigger disaster. William Friedkin spends nearly an hour introducing the fugitives. Jackie Scanlon, an American driver escaping organized crime. Victor Manzon, a French banker fleeing fraud charges. Qasim, a Palestinian militant. And Nilo, a mysterious killer. None is a traditional hero. The mission attracts them because the payment may buy passage out of the village. The rope bridge sequence is one of the great achievements of suspense cinema. 2 trucks crawl across a collapsing wooden bridge during a violent storm. Water strikes the vehicles, ropes twist, boards break, and the dynamite shifts behind the drivers. The scene feels physically impossible because much of it was achieved under punishing real conditions. Later, a fallen tree blocks the road, forcing the men to create an explosive solution while standing beside cargo that could erase them. Its title confused audiences who expected supernatural horror, and its opening against Star Wars proved disastrous. Production costs grew, reviews were mixed, and the box office could not recover the investment. The film became a symbol of new Hollywood ambition, collapsing under blockbuster competition. Time reversed the judgment. Restorations allowed viewers to appreciate Friedkin's sound design, Tangerine Dream's score, and Roy Scheider's exhausted performance. The final miles become almost abstract as Scanlon drives through impossible landscapes and the truck seems to enter his damaged mind. Sorcerer became the ultimate 70s cult masterpiece because its failure came from the same quality that made it great: absolute commitment. It does not entertain from a safe distance. It straps the audience beside decaying dynamite and refuses to slow down. These films prove that opening weekend is not the final judge of cinema. A confused audience, weak campaign, hostile review, or unlucky release date can bury a great movie. But time keeps watching again. Which bomb on this list became your favorite masterpiece? And which forgotten title deserves another chance? Leave your answer below, share this video with a serious film fan, and subscribe for more stories about movies Hollywood dismissed before audiences finally understood their value.